Okay, so let's dive into one of the most bizarre public health stories you'll probably ever hear. We're talking about a community pool party, a celebration of diversity and flavor that went so wrong it became a national cautionary tale. This is the story of the Springfield Curry Cataclysm. And you know it's bad when a scientific journal describes the event as, get this, a symphony of gastrointestinal revolt. I mean, what a phrase. It just perfectly, if not disgustingly, captures the chaos that went down at that pool. Right off the bat, the financial hit was just staggering. We're looking at $450,000. And you've got to understand, that wasn't for the final fix. No, that was just the initial estimate for the decontamination. It was the first sign of just how massive this disaster really was. So yeah, it really makes you ask the question, right? What happens when you mix a big multicultural potluck with a public swimming pool? Well, in this case, you get the Curry Cataclysm, an incident so bad that it shut down the Springfield pool indefinitely and kicked off this huge national conversation about food, safety, and, our public spaces. All right, so let's back up a bit. How on earth did an event with such good intentions turn into, well, a literal recipe for revolt? It all started with this Curry at the Pool event. It was hosted by the Springfield Diversity Initiative, and the whole idea was this flavorful fusion. Sounds great, right? The problem? Over 800 people showed up. And it was potluck style, meaning everyone brought their own home-cooked dishes. Think vats of vindaloo and biryani, but here's the kicker. There was absolutely no hygiene vetting. None. They basically created a ticking time bomb without even realizing it. That lack of oversight, that was the fatal flaw. You can even hear it in the organizer's own words. Priya Patel said, "It was a potpourri of passion. We never anticipated the after effects." They were so focused on the positive vibes, they were just completely blindsided by the very literal and very explosive results. And this is where it all just goes completely sideways, and fast. Okay, look at this timeline. At 3:45 p.m., the first people start feeling cramps. Barely 30 minutes later, you get a synchronized surge of evacuations in the pool. By 5 p.m., the entire place is evacuated and the whole site is officially declared a biohazard. We're talking a complete public health meltdown in less than an hour and a half. Just unbelievable. Okay, so what was actually going on here, scientifically speaking? What happened to that water? This is where the story gets even more shocking, and it really explains how things could spiral out of control so quickly. Well, the lead consultant sent to the scene, a guy named Theo Turbid, put it in the most vivid way possible. He said the density of the pool's 750,000 gallons of water rivaled a chocolate milkshake. I mean, that paints a very clear and very brown picture of what they were dealing with. And the numbers, oh man, the numbers back it up. The water quality was just a complete catastrophe. The pH was all wrong. The turbidity, which is basically how cloudy the water is, was over 2,000 times the legal limit. But the real jaw-dropper is the fecal coliform count. That's the bacteria from, waste. The EPA says it should be under 20 units. This pool, it measured over 10,000. That is 500 times the legal safe limit. Just insane. So this wasn't just some horrible coincidence. Nope, there was actual science behind this synchronized disaster. It all comes down to capsaicin. That's the chemical that makes spicy foods spicy. Well, it can also speed up your gut a lot. So you get hundreds of people eating all this delicious spicy curry, and that laxative effect gets amplified across the entire crowd. And unfortunately for everyone, the timing was just impeccable. And this wasn't just about a ruined pool, of course. The human cost was very real. We're talking 312 official reports of people getting sick. On top of that, you had 14 people who got secondary infections like conjunctivitis. And maybe saddest of all, 22 kids had to be treated for dehydration because of it all. This whole thing was so off the charts that the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, gave it its own official designation, Event ID IL-Curie-001. They even had to invent a new category for it, calling it a sentinel event for festive foodborne flotillas. I'm not kidding. This one event in Springfield literally created a new line item for public health officials.
So, how do you even begin to deal with the aftermath? Well, containing the fallout turned out to be almost as chaotic as the event itself.
Yeah, a simple cleanup was just not going to happen. First, the initial 72-hour closure, that quickly became indefinite. Then they tried hyperchlorination, just dumping tons of chlorine in, but it didn't even touch the organic material. The filters? They got completely clogged with the equivalent of 200 pounds of silt. The situation was so bad that the only real option left on the table was to just demolish the whole thing and rebuild it from scratch for a cool $2.1 million. And of course, this immediately kicked off a huge political debate. On one side, you had the city council. They pointed to public safety reports and passed a new rule requiring microbial swabs for big potlucks. But on the other side, the ACLU fired back, calling the new ordinance flavor fascism. They argued it was an overreach that unfairly targeted cultural events and trampled on people's freedoms. And believe it or not, the ripples from this one pool in Springfield were felt all across the country. The National Recreation and Park Association actually created a $1.5 million grant for hygiene harmony training. And the Springfield Diversity Initiative, the original hosts, after getting hit with a $75,000 fine, they pivoted. They now offer spice-safe swim seminars. You can't make this stuff up. So when all is said and done, what's the real legacy of this bizarre, cautionary, and flavorful tale? I think the biggest takeaway is just how fast a place of community, a place for fun, can turn from a venue into a vector for disease. The Curry Cataclysm is this perfect, if horrifying, example of that fragile line between celebration and safety, and what happens when we let our guard down. And it all kind of boils down to this one provocative question, doesn't it? In diversity's depths, does digestion demand diligence? It really forces us to think about community, culture, and our shared responsibility. How do we celebrate what makes us different while still keeping everyone safe? It's a tough question. And thanks to the Springfield Curry Cataclysm, it's one that event planners everywhere are now forced to ask.